In Atlanta, Allen Underbird Kowicki pulls off a mighty upset to claim the Winston Cup. The King bids farewell with a final curtain call, while other racing legends prepare for another blaze of glory. Speed Week is next. It was perhaps the most exciting day in NASCAR Winston Cup history. 6 drivers, the most ever, went into last Sunday's Hooters 500 at Atlanta with a chance of winning the championship. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Speed Week. I'm Bob Jenkins. Over 165,000 people were at Atlanta Motor Speedway to watch the final race of the year. And after 11,500 miles of competition, it all came down to a matter of inches. Now, in addition to this drama, the event also marked the end of the 35-year NASCAR racing career of the king of stock car racing, Richard Petty. The largest crowd ever to watch a sporting event in Georgia heard Richard's children give their father a special command before the other drivers.
Petty, start your engine.
The pre-race build-up included 4 Apache helicopters hovering over the 41-car field, which amazed us by how close they came to the grandstands. Once the race got going, it didn't run very long under green. Trouble erupted on the second go-round. That's Brett Bodine backing it into the wall, along with pole sitter Rick Mast. As Bodine slid to the bottom of the track, he was hit hard by Hut Strickland. From a view overhead, you can see the tremendous impact between Bodine and Strickland, and you can see also several other cars that became involved. Brett and Hut were taken to a local hospital, but were treated and released. Back under green, the racing that was going on was fierce. That's Derek Cope and Morgan Shepherd battling right in front of championship contenders Bill Elliott and Alan Kowicki. A few laps later, a little further back in the field, the race's biggest crash that eliminated 5 drivers, including Richard Petty, who steered his blazing car to the infield. Again, there were no serious injuries, and we'll have more on Petty's day later in the show. The number of contenders for the championship was reduced to 2 when points leader Davey Allison became an innocent victim of Ernie Irvin's crash on the front stretch. Davey tried to get the car going again, but a broken piece in the right front of the car prevented it from turning.
We just ran out of room. You know, I hate it for all of them guys in the garage area. Everybody at Robert Yates Racing deserves a lot better than this. And, you know, they deserve to win that championship this year, and we didn't get it, so we'll just go back and we'll get ready for next year, and we'll come out and try again. It just wasn't meant to be.
The championship would ultimately come down to who led the most laps. There were many times when that would be determined by a matter of inches. But the winning point was when Kowicki delayed stopping for fuel until he had led enough to earn the 5 bonus points. Elliott did all he could, winning the race, but Kowicki's second-place effort was good enough to take the title by 10 points. The closest margin in Winston Cup history. To celebrate the championship, Allen, as he had done at Phoenix after his first win, took a victory lap around the track in the opposite direction.
We ran great. I led the most laps. I knew how far I had to go in a race to lead the most laps, and at that point, you know, there was no way that he could beat me.
Allen led the points only once in the final standings. Bill was second, Davey third, and Harry Gant and Kyle Petty kept their 4th and 5th positions. Mark Martin finished 6th in the standings, then Ricky Rudd. Terry Labonte moved ahead of Darrell Waltrip, and Sterling Marlin bumped Irvin from 10th. Dale Earnhardt finished 12th in the points, the lowest finish ever for a defending champion. Now some news out of Atlanta regarding 1993. As we suggested last week, Rick Wilson will be the new driver for Petty Enterprises. The car number will be 44. Terry Labonte will have Kellogg sponsorship next year. The car number will be 14. His brother Bobby will move from Busch Grand National to Winston Cup with the Bill Davis Ford team. They've signed a 5-year sponsorship deal with Maxwell House Coffee.
Speed Week is brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Smooth Busch Beer and Easy Drinking Busch Light.
Coming up, a behind-the-scenes look at the grueling Baja 1000. Rod Millen has had some difficult times on the track and off. And expert advice on obtaining sponsorship for your race car.
You know, I've messed up on a few relationships in my life, but there's one that's lasted over 35 years with a lot of help from Quaker State. It's tough on wear, tough on sludge. So Quaker State and I are planning on a meaningful relationship with my new car. So why don't you do the same with your new car's engine, and Quaker State will guarantee it for 250,000 miles or 10 years in writing. You think if I gave Lonnie the Quaker State deal, she'd give me the same guarantee? Quaker State is one tough motor oil.
You've seen it before. The ones who run with the herd, and the one who always seems to run alone. You don't see them often enough, though.
This high-performance drink cleans your fuel system to help maintain peak performance. STP gas treatment, the high-performance drink for your car.
There were a couple of other races at Atlanta besides the Hooters 500. The ARCA Supercar Series was also running its final event of the year. The ARCA title was on the line between Bob Keselowski and Bobby Boucher in car number 21. Throughout the day, there was some great three-abreast action, but in this instance, Jerry O'Neill's fine run was ended after rear-ending Dave Simcoe. Neither driver was injured. Loy Allen Jr. with an Alan Kowicki look-alike paint job held off Tim Fedewa to win his first-ever ARCA Superspeedway race. But second-generation driver Bobby Boucher's 10th place finish was good enough to wrap up the championship. The Dodge Shelby Pro Series finale was held late Friday afternoon. 17 cars took the green flag and headed down the main straightaway, 3 abreast, before taking a sharp left into an infield chicane. The Can-Am machines bunched together and contact occurred between several cars, with Michigan's Chris Winkler spinning out. Sweden's Robert Amron in the middle groove in the white car was in his first Shelby Pro Series race ever. He started last but finished first. Scott Harrington's 4th place was good enough to win the series championship. In addition to all the racing that went on at Atlanta Motor Speedway, there was also a big announcement concerning a new racing series, one that will see driving legends age 50 and older competing in identically prepared cars. The new series will be called Fastmasters. It will be a chance for race fans to witness the likes of Cale Yarborough, Derek Bell, Johnny Rutherford, champions from the past representing every racing division competing again. A chance for these champions to relive some memories doing what they love most.
We had a lot of fun making headlines and winning the races when we were at our peak, and to have an opportunity to come back and relive some of the memories again and be on the racetrack with the guys that we raced with before. That's pretty exciting, and I think the fans are going to really enjoy it.
Indianapolis Raceway Park will host 5 USAC-sanctioned preliminary rounds and the Fastmasters Championship race. The series will be televised by ESPN on an expanded 3-hour Saturday night Thunder show. Each preliminary will pit 10 drivers against each other in a format designed for the series. The 5 qualifying nights will consist of 3 heat races, and the drivers will choose cars by blind draw. Here's the format. Heat 1, 10 laps on the IRP Oval, starting position determined by blind draw. Heat number 2, 10 laps on an IRP modified road course, starting position determined by inverted finishing order from Heat 1. Heat number 3, 10 laps, 5 each on the oval and road course. Starting position will be determined by inverting total points from Heats 1 and 2. Drivers receive points for each finishing position. The top 2 drivers from each preliminary round will advance to the finals. General Tire and Simpson Race Products have signed on as associate sponsors to outfit the Consulier GTP race car. The 1,800-pound, 200-plus horsepower race car has already seen extensive lap testing at Raceway Park. Test drivers Larry Rice and Chet Phillip were confident about the car's performance and handling.
I drove the race car on the low line. I kind of diamonded it off. It didn't do anything funny. It didn't want to spin. It didn't want to push real bad. And that really, to me, makes me feel good about this car, because if it doesn't want to do things when you're jerking the wheel around, it's going to be comfortable for everybody who drives it.
You can dive in low and let it drift up. The car just doesn't jump around on you. It's just real stable, real easy to drive. It's fun to drive.
Well, here's a list of some of the drivers who have already accepted an invitation to participate in the Fastmaster Series. First race will be June the 19th. Should be great seeing some of these guys back in action. And here's the modified road course on which the drivers will be participating. As you can see, not only will they have to turn left and then right, but will also have to do a little shifting and braking also. Last weekend was the 1992 edition of the Baja 1000, which marked the silver anniversary of this most famous and grueling event. We sent our Steve Weiss out to give us a behind-the-scenes look at the challenge of Baja.
In 25 years, the Baja Desert has changed very little. Man and machine have changed a lot. Herzog Racing Sport Explorer, with 400 horsepower and the latest in off-road technology, represents the new generation of Baja racer who comes to this barren desert for the same old reasons.
There's probably 300 other teams out here trying to do this, and I don't know how many foreign countries. I heard 10 or 15 the other day. And I think one thing we all have in common is we all love the desert, and we all like coming out here and competing, and we all want to win.
The Baja 1000 stretches the distance of a trek from New York to Florida, swallowing up all manner of race vehicle along the way. Herzog Racing has 6 fully staffed chase vehicles or mobile pit crews providing support, carefully tracking driver Danny Ashcraft's progress with parts, tools, and tires on standby. At the halfway point, 500 miles into the race, and there's a new challenge. Day has turned to night, and the drivers now must race through the Baja Desert in the dark.
When the car gets in the pit,
Chase teams will make a quick assessment of repairs, and an impatient relief driver will finally get a turn.
You're kind of wondering how the car is doing because this race is so spread out. Radio communications is a little tough, and so you're just kind of waiting a lot of the time.
got the right pin.
Holmes has a tough trail ahead. Downtime has placed this race in a battle for the season class championship in jeopardy. All through the night, rocks, bushes, and cactus seem to dance in the dark. Concentration is slipping away as bloodshot eyes and aching backs take over. The sun has come up for a second time, and the finish line is finally in sight. In 22 hours and 29 minutes, the Herzog Racing team, bandaged and bruised, manages not a win or a class championship, but something else to be proud of, a Baja finish on this, the silver anniversary. From La Paz, this is Steve Weiss for ESPN Speedweek.
All right, thanks, Steve. The overall four-wheel winner was Paul Simon in a Ford 150 truck in 16 hours and 53 minutes. Now let's take a look at what you can see on ESPN this coming week in terms of racing on our Air Force Reserve air times. The IHRA Scotchgard Automotive Protector Fall Nationals can be seen Friday morning at 12:30. Incidentally, Scotchgard will be a series sponsor for the entire season in IHRA for 1993. Now here's the rest of this week's air times.
Right now, for a limited time at the Appliance Store, get 0% financing for 6 months on all Sony merchandise in the store. Only at the Appliance Store. Good people, great values.
Excuse me. Do you wear your safety belt?
Why, no. I don't wear my safety belt.
Thank you.
ESPN is your season ticket to the greatest NFL action anywhere. You're guaranteed the best seat in the house for the season's most exciting matchups from coast to coast. And you'll get the inside story before and after the game. NFL action in your face every week on ESPN. If you miss it, you lose. Brought to you locally by your local Chrysler Plymouth dealers.
Coming up on SportsCenter, who went where and why? We'll detail the expansion draft. Michael meets Christian and the Wolves in Minnesota, and the latest news on LT's future. Join Dan Patrick and Jack Edwards for SportsCenter. Speedweek's ground transportation arranged through General Rent-A-Car, where you can now earn a $50 U.S. savings bond with just 4 rentals of a quality Chrysler compact or larger car.
IMSA officials met today and introduced a new concept for its premier Camel GT series that will feature open cockpit world sports cars. Ultimately, the new series with production-based engines will replace the highly technical and complex prototypes that compete today. A new set of rules and more details on this new concept will be forthcoming. IndyCar champion Bobby Rahal has won fourth quarter Driver of the Year honors. The year-long winner will be announced next week. Sprint car champion Doug Wolfgang is slowly but surely getting himself ready for a comeback next season. Doug, as you probably remember, was severely burned in a crash earlier this year during practice for a World of Outlaws event. This was all that was left after rescue workers were finally able to extract Wolfie from the fiery inferno. The impact, which had knocked him unconscious, also broke off the fuel pump, which fed the fire that burned Doug's feet and legs. As a result, two of his friends, Bob Schreiber and Maury Richard, have come up with a device that they say will prevent a reoccurrence. The Wolfie valve, as they're calling it, is designed to keep fuel in the tank in case of a crash. All of its working pieces will be located inside the fuel tank. The valve is controlled by the car's oil pressure so that when the engine shuts off, so too will the flow of fuel.
This is a bona fide safety feature, not only for sprint cars, but all types of race cars. In my mind, after going through what I went through, it's probably as important as the sprint cars getting mandatory roll cages back in the early 70s.
The Wolfie valve will be available not only to him, but any driver or team that chooses to use it. Well, here at Speed Week, we're always interested in ways that racing can be made safer, not only with pieces that relate to the race car, like the Wolfie valve, but to the racetrack itself. The addition of a styrofoam-type energy-absorbing barrier is a relatively new idea that's been experimented with around the world and seems to be gaining in popularity. Our first exposure to foam barriers being used as a safety device on a racecourse came in 1989 at the German Grand Prix. Emanuele Pirro lost control and smashed through several blocks. The car stopped before hitting anything solid, but the driver appeared to suffer a concussion and had to be carried away. Perhaps a sand trap would have been a better way to slow the car down. Then earlier this year, during the Winston All-Pro race at I-70 Speedway, Jody Ridley went out of the ballpark after hitting the foam barriers that lined the concrete walls. Jody was not injured, but you can see how placement of the barriers helped act as a launching pad. Recently, while checking out footage from Oswego Speedway's Budweiser Classic, we couldn't help but notice the foam barriers that the track has installed in the outer portion of its turns.
We had a stuck throttle several months ago where a guy got into the wall real heavy, and certainly the damage was severe. However, the most important thing is the driver walked away.
I caught a wheel going into 3. I hit the wall probably 100 miles an hour, flat left side first. We rolled the car back to the pits. I didn't have a mark on my body, and they definitely take the impact.
Foam barriers or blocks have been used at other East Coast tracks like Lancaster and Flemington for the past few years. One of the reasons why you don't see other racetracks picking up this idea? Cost.
It is an expensive situation. Each block costs $100 a piece. And once a car gets into it, it pretty much disintegrates. But I think over the years, I think we're going to see a lot of tracks going to something like this. Certainly, on a lot of the tracks that have concrete walls especially, where there's no absorption, this would provide a margin of safety for the drivers.
A car with a worn suspension is almost like having no suspension at all. The bumps are no longer absorbed, so your wheels can actually leave the road. It's more than uncomfortable. It's unsafe. But Midas can put you back in control. With a complete inspection, a computerized diagnosis, and precision work by suspension experts, from shocks and struts to alignment, we'll fix your wagon. For a safer suspension, nobody beats Midas.
It's wild out there. You need a jungle fighter on your side. That's why more and more people choose Toyo tires, the jungle fighters. Toyo tires, driven to perform.
Speed Week's travel arranged through Continental. One airline can make a difference. What's the difference? For the price of regular coach, a first-class seat. That's the difference on Continental.
For the past couple of weeks, we've told you about how some sponsors and manufacturers have re-examined their involvement in racing next year. Well, earlier this week, Derek Daly had a chance to sit down and talk with sponsorship expert Guy Edwards.
Thanks, Bob. Well, who is Guy Edwards? He's been involved in international motorsports for over 20 years. A former teammate of two-time world driving champion Graham Hill, Edwards is perhaps best remembered for rescuing Niki Lauda from this flaming wreckage in 1976. More recently, he's worked as a sponsor seeker for several different teams, arranging the Silk-Cut Jaguar partnership, which won Le Mans in 1988 and 90, as well as the Castrol Budweiser Jaguar sponsorship for the IMSA Camel GT Series. Edwards is currently the marketing director for the Lotus Formula One team and has just written a new book about how to obtain sponsorship, which can be a tremendous benefit to young drivers. Guy, this really is a fascinating book covering almost every aspect of how to get sponsorship. But this is an art that you have perfected over many, many years. Why give all your secrets away?
Well, to help the young drivers and teams coming through. I learned the hard way. I hope this is going to make it easier for the next generation.
Is there a couple of key areas that you think you have in that book that he needs to follow strictly?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a certain logical sequence about it. First of all, he's got to want to do it and be prepared to devote a lot of time to doing it. And then he's got to find the right project, and then he's got to learn how to write letters, and then he's got to learn what to say on the phone, and then he's got to learn what to do in meetings, and so on. And eventually, if he follows all that sequential performance, if you like, he will get himself a sponsor, if he wants one.
But how to do all this is in the book?
How to do it is exactly laid out in the book.
What about when you go to a major meeting now, and I'm a sponsor, what can I get from being involved in big-time racing?
The first thing you have to do when you go to a meeting is to look at it through the eyes of the man you're talking to. Why should he do it? Why should he spend his money with you? So if you can show him a way that is going to help him do what he's doing, let's say whatever he's selling, then he may buy into it. If you can't, he won't. It's as simple as that.
And do you read, as the meeting goes on, what he needs, or do you already know before you go in?
No, of course, he will always know his own company a lot better than you will ever know it. So really, you have to listen as well as talk, which a lot of people make the mistake of. They do a lot of talking, but not a lot of listening.
Well, I know you're just on the end of a round-the-world tour. I know you've just spent some time in Japan, and the book obviously works because you've just secured $80 million?
Yes, for Team Lotus in Formula One, but, you know, they have a very specific project. You've got a marvelous heritage. You've got equity in the marketplace, and you've got a team that's going to win the World Championship. So it's a question of bringing that to the right people.
What is a full budget for Team Lotus to win the World Championship per year?
Well, you're looking, let's say, at a 5-year program to win a World Championship, realistically. You may do it sooner, but you've got to say it'll take 5 years. To do it over those 5 years, you will probably need about $150 million in sponsorship, if you like, and an alliance with some engine manufacturer. Then you could do it, and which is what Team Lotus will do.
Well, you've been successful. I'm surprised how detailed the book is, but it will be a tremendous help to young drivers. And I know it's a good book because I'm even in it.
You are indeed.
In the early days. Thanks, Guy, for coming to Speedweek to talk to us.
At Ford, when we test technology, we go by the book. This book, it takes us places that make our Ford trucks even tougher and make our performance for the street even better. Because the more we race, the more we learn. And no one races in more places than Ford. We test our ideas all over the world to make driving better for you at home. Have you driven a Ford lately?
An Indy engine today costs in excess of $100,000, so it is a major investment. And we think it's very important to use Pennzoil to protect that investment. The quality of Pennzoil is very important to us. It's always high quality. Pennzoil has never let us down. If Pennzoil is good enough for us, it's certainly good enough for the average car owner. I use it in every car I own and drive. Performance, protection, quality. That's what Pennzoil means to me.
All of these championship-winning drivers have one thing in common: Goodyear tires. The championship-winning technology that's found in the Eagle and Wrangler tires that Goodyear races can also be found in the Eagle and Wrangler tires that Goodyear sells. The champions know, and it's why we say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
This week's Petty Memory is brought to you by First Brands Corporation, makers of STP gas treatment. The eyes of the sporting world were focused on Richard Petty and the Atlanta Motor Speedway last weekend for the King's 1,185th and final NASCAR Winston Cup start. On lap 94, many thought his day had come to an end. But Richard was still able to muster a smile for his adoring fans. The crew was able to make repairs so that he could take the checkered flag one final time.
It's been wonderful. I mean, 35 years, the good Lord's looked after us all these years. And, you know, I'm still walking around. You know, I hate to got in a wreck and disappointed me and some of the fans, but the big deal is we're here talking to you when it's over with, and I wouldn't change none of it. I wouldn't trade nothing for nothing else.
Back. This time we get it. STP gas treatment. Cleans intake valves and fuel injectors to help engines run better. STP, the edge.
Now, you can own the definitive documentary on the King, a production as hard driving as the man himself, Richard Petty, the legend. This limited edition 2-volume home video includes the official Petty Collector's Car. And if you order now, you'll receive this free commemorative poster. To order, call 1-800-547-4343 or send $38.95 plus $5 shipping and handling to Richard Petty, the legend, 805B Franklin Court, Marietta, Georgia, 30067.
Don't forget our live Speed Week from New York City at 7:30 Friday night, December 4th, preceding the NASCAR Winston Cup banquet. Before we leave you tonight, a story which shows the dedication of a racer, not only to his craft, but to his family as well. Rod Millen won the Drivers' Championship in the Mickey Thompson Stadium Series this year. What most people don't know is that he did it while facing a parent's worst nightmare, the serious illness of his newborn son. Marty Reed has more.
"1992 began perfectly for Rod Millen. In January, he became only the second driver ever to sweep both heats and the main at a Mickey Thompson Stadium race. He would go on to win 3 more main events in the 8-race series and capture the Grand National Sport Truck Drivers' Championship.
But Rod Millen's life would change June 1st. Wife Shannon gave birth to their new son, Connor. But unlike the hundreds of healthy babies born that day, Connor was born with a severe heart defect. So severe he would need a transplant, and it would be 2 long, agonizing months before a donor was found.
It was very touch and go whether he'd make it or not. Shannon just spent an incredible amount of time at the hospital and working with whatever she could do to keep him content and happy until we could get a donor.
1 month after Connor's birth and 1 month before the transplant, Rod went out and won the 2-wheel drive division in showroom stock at Pikes Peak. But focusing on driving was getting more difficult.
Well, I think the Mickey Thompson Series, there was a couple of times where I knew I wasn't focused, but most of the races were very short. On some of my longer events down in Asia, there I was having more trouble because those were 4-day events, and you know, you can tell yourself when you're just not doing it.
Short races or not, no one came close to matching Rod Millen's record off-road in 1992. But his biggest prize of the season will never rest on his mantle, but rather in his arms, in the arms of his wife, Shannon.
It's just the most incredible thing to see how well he's improving day by day.
For Speed Week, I'm Marty Reed.
Thanks, Marty, and our best to little Connor Millen. And that will do it for another edition of Speed Week. Don't forget to join us next week when we'll be on Tuesday night at 7:30 Eastern with a roundtable discussion featuring our auto racing analysts. And we leave you tonight with a salute to the 1992 NASCAR Winston Cup champion, Alan Kulwicki. So long, everyone.
Speed Week has been brought to you by Goodyear, #1 in tires.